Gnocchi. Now, so many people consider this the ultimate comfort food in Italy, and it's been raining and there's been thunder here today, so I thought, let's make gnocchi.
Gnocchi have existed in Italy in some form or another since the Renaissance. However, they weren't always made with potatoes back then, which only arrived in Italy much later. The potato was brought to Italy by the Spanish from Peru around 1565, but only really became a part of the Italian cuisine much later. This flyer shows the preparation of gnocchi for Carnevale in 1808. Italians have a saying, particularly in Rome, Giovedì gnocchi, venerdì pesce, sabato trippa. And in fact, you'll find that in many restaurants in Italy, they still follow this order. I always only order fish on a Friday to get the freshest catch. Originally it was for religious reasons. One could only eat fish and legumes on Friday, so they would enjoy a hearty plate of gnocchi in preparation for the lighter dish of fish the next day, all working towards Sunday, which is the day of meat. Simple, tossed in butter with fragrant forest green slivers of sage, hearty and smothered in a thick, sweet tomato and basil sauce, then covered in mozzarella to bake in the oven alla Sorrentina. Eaten in a little Ligurian trattoria in Portofino or Genova with fresh pesto ground from pinoli, basilico, aglio e pecorino.
I have made delicious gnocchi in the past, and I have just found it really simple and it worked really well. And then I had this one time, it was actually with Brian when I was living in Rome, and he said, let's make some gnocchi, and we made them. And I can't remember exactly what went wrong, but I just remember feeling embarrassed because they didn't go well. And I thought, how is this possible? I'm just using more or less the same recipe that I'd used before. But gnocchi it's a very deceptively simple, because you see, the thing is, you're just using very few ingredients, but it's very, very dependent on what type of potato you have and how much water is in the potato. I know that the older the potato, the better, because it has less water. Also, there are different methods for cooking your potatoes, and some people do them in water with the skins on, so that you're not letting more water in. And then others, as I'm doing them today, roast them in the oven, so that they're not even touching water, so that, because basically the more water they have, the heavier they will be. They'll absorb, they'll have all that water in. You can get bad gnocchi, can't you? It can be sort of just, what's the word? I'm thinking gommoso in Italian, but it's sort of like a gloopy, chewy, heavy, and you want them to be fluffy clouds. There are those who use eggs and those who don't use eggs. I've been speaking with Italian women all week about gnocchi out in the street, at the market, our next door neighbors, and they all have slightly different methods. Some put eggs in, some don't. Some say that by adding eggs, it's much easier to work the dough. And others say that, no, you don't taste the potatoes in that case, and they become heavier if you add the eggs. Some just add an egg yolk, which is what I'm going to do today, I think. I'm going to add 2 eggs. I also have this ancient recipe book from 1892 or something, and they don't really specify about the measurements, because you really have to just look at what's happening with your potato, with your level of humidity in the room, and with the flour that you're using, and then just adjust things according to your situation, and which makes it very difficult cooking. So that's the thing. It seems simple, but it's intuitive cooking, and you really have to be able to just look at it and say, I think it needs more flour, even though the recipe has said only 300 grams. So this is why I've been trying to find a foolproof recipe for you guys. One of my main sources of advice is Eva, the caretaker on the farm, his wife, and she is wonderful, and she's always cooking for us. Every time I'm out walking with Gianfranco, she's like, here's some pesto, here's some fresh pasta I made, here's some lasagna that I just whipped up. And she doesn't like being on camera, which is a shame, because otherwise you could learn from her too. But I did record some of our conversation just because I was trying to take down notes via audio while I was speaking with her. Aspetta, ogni
mezzo chilo di patate e un etto di farina.
un etto di farina, ok.
Sì.
Ok. E usi le uova o no?
No, io non ce le metto.
Ah.
Oggi mi diceva Claudio che la sua moglie faceva il compleanno e allora ha fatto gli gnocchi per 20 persone,
sì.
ho lavorato.
Sì.
E lei ha detto ci mette le uova, ma io no.
And you know, it's funny because she just says, look, you know, sometimes I use zero flour, sometimes I use double zero flour. If you're in North America, I guess you can just use all-purpose flour, but there are those in Italy who say, yeah, no, definitely use double zero flour making gnocchi. And then there are those who add parmesan, those who don't add it. I don't want them to be bland, so I think I might add a little bit of parmesan and some salt. The most important thing that everyone agrees on is you mustn't work the dough too much. So it's not like making pasta dough where you really want to knead it. The more you're sort of fiddling with it with your hands, the more that gluten is going to develop, and that makes them really tough, which is not what we want. That's getting us away from the pillowy clouds. So I'm going to start by preheating my oven, washing my potatoes. They're very dirty because they've come direct from a farmer. My parents bought them at the market yesterday. And then I'm just going to prick them with a fork just to let out as much water during the cooking process as possible, and then put them on a tray with some salt. You could even just put them on a wire rack in your oven and roast them. And I'm just going to do that until they feel sort of soft when I push a fork through. Then I'm going to cut them open and put them through the ricer. Now, the ricer is an important part because you might think, okay, well, some people on the amateur end can think, oh, I might even just blend these or use a beater or something. No, definitely don't do that, or you will end up with glue, potato glue. So don't do that. And the other option would be to mash them, but even mashing them just works them too much, and it doesn't actually get them nice and fine, and you know, you sort of still have chunks, so you then have to work them quite a bit, which is not what we want. So what the typical Italians use is a schiacciapatate, which literally means a potato squasher or a ricer, and I'm going to put them through that. And you could, I've read that you can also put them, you can sort of squash them through a sieve if you have a sieve, and just sort of squash them through that. The important thing is to do this when the potatoes are hot, so that then they will go through the little holes a lot easier. Although Eva did say that she waits for them to cool down. So you see, oh, there's so many different ways of doing things. But I think I'm going to do them while they're quite hot. Yeah, they're just a lot more fragile, and then they can really break down a lot. And then I'll lay them out. So I've just weighed it again, and now it's about 1.3 kilos. So that is something to take into consideration. I'll just spread it out like this. I'm going to just sift the flour on and see how it goes, because this is the thing, is like you don't want to add too much flour, or this, again, they're just going to be really heavy. So just the minimum amount of flour that is necessary. This dress, I bought it in an extra big size, and then I put like a little corset thing. I sewed a little corset into it at the back so that I can wear it at different times during my pregnancy. Now I think, what am I at? 6.5 months, 7 months? No, 6.5? Yeah, something like that. So yes, it is giving me lots of room to breathe, and yes, let's get started. Add a little bit more flour.
I think after a week of gnocchi research and speaking with so many signore, I ended up worried that I would make my gnocchi heavy, and I added very little flour, much less than I normally do. I shaped all of the dough, carefully rolling each gnocco over the little wooden ridges. I was planning to serve these for dinner for my parents, Guido and Gianfranco, so I decided to chop an onion and get my sauce on to simmer. I used a jar of our garden tomatoes and basil that I preserved a couple of months ago. And then as I was nearing the end, I had this feeling that it just didn't feel like it normally does between my fingers. So I tested 3 gnocchi in boiling water, and to my dismay, I found they were mushy and almost completely lost their shape in the water. I was so disappointed, but this is why you should always test 1 or 2 before throwing all of them into the boiling water. I then resignedly squashed all my gnocchi back into one big ball of dough, added more flour, and started all over again with my shaping. By this time it was late at night, so I had already served an alternate dinner for my family, so I made only 1 portion and put the rest covered in the fridge on a large tray overnight. The result was delicious, still light and delicate, but they kept their shape perfectly. In spite of adding salt and parmigiano, they weren't really that salty, so you really rely on the sauce to bring the saltiness. Eva says she doesn't add any salt or cheese at all. The next day I decided to make a different version, burro e salvia, butter and sage. And given the gnocchi aren't that salty, I added some pancetta as well. We have an abundance of sage growing in the church garden. For this version, I cooked the gnocchi ever so quickly in the boiling water, then drained them well of water and placed them in a pan to sizzle with a little melted butter and the chopped sage.
Guarda, ora sono leggermente croccanti fuori, guarda. Guarda qua.
Wow.
No? Perché the thing about gnocchi is, I was saying to Luciana, because she was like, oh, I love how they're soft, and I was saying how Guido and I, we prefer pasta because it's al dente and chewy, and it's the same way we feel about pavlova. It's just soft and no texture. So I feel like if you add some texture, it is more to our liking, no?
Ma senti, questi sono praticamente,
Guarda questo.
non dico come delle crocchette di patate in pratica.
Sì, sì.
Sono degli gnudi di patate.
No, gnudi, ma infatti devo ancora fare con la ricotta.
Buono.
And they're Tuscan, so I should have done my fatti, in fact.
Fa la prossima volta.
Sì.
Wow.
No?
Lunch!
Yay! Gnocchi? Gnocchi!
This is what Italians would call un piatto goloso. Goloso can mean greedy, but it can also mean delicious and decadent. Buttery, creamy gnocchi with crisp golden edges, the deep hit of sage, and saltiness of pancetta, and a generous layer of grated parmigiano.
Wow.
What do you think?
Con la crosticina sono ancora più buoni.
Sì.
Okay. Try one.
Oh, no, I've already eaten it. Buono.
Così sono buoni.
Sì, sì.
In the end, which do you prefer? How do you like to eat your gnocchi? So use your instincts, experiment, or just enjoy the next time you are at a friend's house or in a restaurant and you eat handmade gnocchi fatti in casa. Would you mind giving this video a little like? It would mean so much to me. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my patrons, and I will see you next episode. Alla prossima.
Gnocchi, Mama, please.
Gnocchi, mamma, please.
Mamma, please.
Ancora gnocchi?
Ancora?
Gnocchi?
Gnocchi.